Hey guys, what's up? Son of Chelsea here for a live Google Hangout. I haven't done one of these in quite a while, but I've got someone special to talk to today. FootieWriter, I'm sure you've known him. You've probably seen him on 100% Chelsea last season, well known on Twitter. So thanks for joining me, mate. Just introduce yourself and what you do on Twitter.
Cool. Hi guys, I'm FootieWriter, Christian Stat, a journalist working closely with Chelsea fan as well. For those of you that don't know, I'll make it quite clear and quite obvious. Also cover transfer news across the window and every window, and in fact every day, to be honest. So that's where I really focus on.
Yeah, I mean, so looking at the transfer window, of course, it's close to coming to an end. What was it? Tuesday is the deadline day. It's a massive day, especially for Sky. And mostly, for me, it becomes a little bit boring, in truth.
Yeah.
I find it to be overhyped a lot of the time, especially just firstly, what are your thoughts on that deadline day? Because last season, of course, we hear about the deadline and about a deal's got to be done by now, and if it isn't done by this time, it won't happen. Now, the case with Danny Welbeck and Radamel Falcao, who went to Arsenal and United respectively, I know it said that there was enough paperwork for that deal to still go through, but does it make sense to you that teams are still able to sign players after that deadline? Like, to me, it sounds like it's a bit stupid. I was sitting there watching it and then there's still signings being made after the deadline. So it feels a bit stupid to me. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I get that. I mean, the rule is technically you have to have paperwork in by 11. If you've got one piece of paperwork from the signing club and one from the selling club to say that a deal is going to go ahead, then that's fine. They don't the deal doesn't have to be done until midnight. In some cases, you can ask for a 3-hour extension, and in some cases, it's even gone 6 hours, but that's a rarity, and that often only through systematical errors and administrative errors. But I do agree with the fact that there should be a cut-off time, but there are reasons why. A lot of it is technical issues, and that's why, I mean, people watch the transfer market on Sky Sports until like 1 o'clock in the morning to see what's still going on, and news even still filters through the day after as well. So it's interesting, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can understand that. It's just from a fan's perspective, it's a little bit. That's why I think it's a little bit overhyped, in truth.
Yeah.
But just on this transfer window, I'm talking about all teams. What have your thoughts been on the transfer window so far? I mean, we've had some big deals going through recently. Pedro to Chelsea. You've had that David De Gea saga that's been going on all summer. There were talks at some point that Gareth Bale was going to go to United. So has the transfer window kind of planned out in the way you expected it to from back in, like, say, June? Or do you think that it's been a little bit flat compared to last season? Just give me your thoughts on that.
I think the difference between this window and the last one is this window, it's been dotted. It's been dotted around from the start to where we are now. Whereas the last window, a lot of it was done all at the same time. So 600 million roughly is being spent in the Premier League, but it has been all over the place. So it looks like we're on to make a record for this summer. But as I say, the last window, it was all dotted around. This window, it was all dotted around, and last window, not so much. So I think that's why people were thinking that this window's been a bit quiet. But in terms of the money spend and the players as well, I mean, Watford and teams like that have made 11, 12 signings. So it's been really, really busy for a lot of the Premier League teams. And in fact, even the teams that are usually quieter, like your Evertons, have still made 5 or 6 signings. So it has been relatively busy.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of something I've noticed recently is clubs, especially lower clubs like Everton, we've seen with John Stones and Saido Berahino of West Brom. The clubs are now putting their foot down. Do you think that's in relation to the TV money coming in?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think a lot of chairmen are now getting annoyed with the transfer deadline going beyond the start of the season, and they're putting their foot down because they don't think that the money's worth it because of the TV money, which has allowed teams like Stoke to bring in players like Shaqiri and other teams around there, so they don't have to sell anymore. It's not a matter of money. I think personally that John Stones will still go to Chelsea, but I think that Everton's standpoint on it has allowed them to possibly increase its price by about 10 to 20% on what it would have been a week ago. Whereas if they had accepted John Stones' transfer request, they've got no position to negotiate. So I think it's a clever move by the chairman, and I think them personally coming out and saying it, or going through social media, or going through the managers even, is a real show of strength to the bigger boys who have been bullying their way around for the last few years.
Yeah, it is a change, and also something I've noticed, as you just point out with like Watford, you are seeing a load of clubs now, like the quality of the signings that are being made. Stoke is just ridiculous. It's amazing. Like even a year ago, if someone told me that Shaqiri and players like that would be going, if Stoke were going to have the most Champions League winners in the Premier League, I mean, most of us would have gone, that's absolutely absurd, but that's the way it is. And I think, do you think as well, I know TV has a large part in that, in the way the market works now, especially in England. But do you think as well, and this is something I believe, that the fact that Chelsea and Manchester City have come through in the last, 10, 11 years, and really invested a lot of money, do you think in some ways it's helped the league in terms of, as they say, money filtering down to a low leagues? Or do you think it's just simply just the TV money? Because in my mind, I think sometimes compared to the league that Chelsea won in like 04 and 05, it's so different to the league now. I mean, it's so more difficult. You're facing teams each week that, I mean, tomorrow Chelsea playing Crystal Palace. I mean, you just look at some of the quality of those players, you know, it's completely different to 10 years ago, you know. So do you think it's a mix of both, or do you just think it's mainly down to TV from Sky and BT recently?
I do think the TV deal's got a lot to do with it, but I also think that the parachute payments and the way the Premier League have worked them into the lower leagues, so a lot of money's getting spread around the 92 clubs in league football in England at the moment, which I think is really good for them. Not enough's going to grassroots, but that's a different subject altogether. But I think that the Premier League money, the TV money, is allowing the teams like Everton, the sort of mid to lower table clubs, and even teams like Spurs and Stoke, the sort of teams that you'd expect to finish around 7th, 8th, 9th, to spend a lot more money than they would have in previous seasons. And even Levy, with his penny pinching, will have to splash the cash, I think, in the coming days.
Yeah, I mean, I think just moving on from that and like general transfer, talking about Chelsea's transfer window. I mean, I'm kind of a little bit mixed in terms of my feelings. Of course, you'd probably say last transfer window was the perfect transfer window. In truth, we had all of our business done before the pre-season. Diego Costa, Cesc Fabregas, you know, some excellent signings. Got Loic Remy in later on in the transfer window. This one's been kind of very different. We seem to have stood still for most of it, and now since the City game, we've really sprung into action with the signings of Baba Rahman, which was going to happen anyway before the City result. Of course, that got announced literally after the City game. What are your thoughts from Chelsea, like of their transfer window? Because of course the signing of Pedro was simply amazing. I mean, the fact that over a 24-hour period, it literally went from him literally going to sign for United, all the reliable people saying that he's going to be signing for United, and in the space of 24 hours he's signing for Chelsea, you know. So what are your thoughts overall? Of course we've got the John Stones transfer saga, which you just said that you think could still happen. We'll maybe move on to that. But also, of course, Paul Pogba. I mean, I've said with Paul Pogba that I don't really believe anything will happen until people start saying, you know, I've heard from like Demartio, and I know you've said about a deal with Oscar being somehow, we've been talking about 100% Chelsea literally every night when Pogba comes up, of course. Yeah. So what are your thoughts? We'll go on to those deals of Stones and Pogba, but what are your thoughts on Chelsea's overall transfer window?
I think it started out slow. I think we can all agree with that. I basically think that Abramovich wasn't looking to spend a lot this summer. He felt that he'd built a team that he thought was capable of challenging for the Premier League, and the start of the season was a wake-up call. It was disappointing. Our back four had got a year older. You could see it over the summer. I mean, even to Ivanovich's balding head, you could sort of see that they got a year older. And unfortunately, last season, our back four wasn't the quickest. And over the summer, John Terry, Gary Cahill and Ivanovic all got slower. Obviously, Azpilicueta's still got the pace because he's quite young, but not replacing any one of them showed in the first few games. So we hadn't made any real proper signings until then, apart from Falcao, if you want to call him a proper signing, but that's a different debate. And so Abramovich thought to himself and had a meeting with the board. Probably, this is speculation, that it's time to put some money in, because teams like City were spending 49 million on Sterling, and even to a lesser extent on Delph, and just buying players that they felt that they needed to make an English core. And Abramovich didn't have any plans to really push any money into the club this summer, because he's made it pretty clear that he sort of wants to step back, and financial fair play has helped him and Jose Mourinho to stabilise a team. But it was a case of get involved or get left behind. So I think we can expect to see deals in the next few days. The John Stones one, I think, will happen. And if it doesn't, for one reason or another, mostly because Everton will... I think Everton have backed themselves into a bit of a corner with John Stones, because they said, we won't accept any bid. But the reality is that they can't turn down 40 million. But Chelsea are no longer a team that really want to pay 40 million anymore. So I do think the links with Garay, possibly some of the others that are appearing, do have an element of truth to them, sort of as second or third choice options. So I do think that Chelsea are making moves now. The people that I've spoken to say that they're interested in a various number of players. But I think we'll see how it plays out over the next couple of days. I don't even think it'll be a case of deadline day. I think you'll see where Chelsea are going to possibly make their moves on deadline day. So I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, on the John Stones thing, it is a transfer saga. I mean, I've been talking about it on my channel for weeks now. Just, I mean, it's at first I thought, you know, in Chelsea were linked with him way back before the transfer window. I think in May I saw links to John Stones, 26 million, I think was tipped then. I think John Stones definitely is clearly the future. He's clearly going to feature in the England team heavily, and clearly looks like an excellent defender that's going to grow in the coming seasons. At first I thought 30 million is just ridiculous. I think I'd stop at 26 million. But in truth, I think we're getting to a point now in the transfer window where price really is getting to, especially with English players, is getting quite ridiculous now. So, you know, it's like the price is just absolutely. Raheem Sterling is not a £50 million player. I think Raheem Sterling can turn into that. He's still very young, but it's just the prices that are being touted for some of these players. But that's the market, and what are you supposed to do? I mean, Everton are not. It's not illegal for Everton to say we want 40 million for this player.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think Chelsea have been very shrewd with the business they've done in the past couple of years since Jose's return. I mean, really the whole rebuilding job that was done over the 2 seasons Jose, and especially in that first season where he was really able to bring in some great players, you know. But I mean, the John Stones one, it's weird. At first, I thought that it would eventually would happen. I thought Chelsea. I've stuck to this, and I've constantly said that I think if Chelsea hit 35 million or above, I think Everton will not be able to reject that. I think John Stones will be a Chelsea player. Of course, as you said, it's more like 40 million, but then Chelsea definitely want to stick within these FFP guidelines and want to the whole deal of one player in, one player out, you know. And whatever people think of it, I actually think it's smart, because I think in the long run it works, and you can get a net spend, you know, a positive net spend. There's a lot of jokes about net spend, but you do get a positive one. And seeing the deals we've had for David Luiz and even De Bruyne, I know now it maybe doesn't look like, you know, it looks like it may have been a bad sell. You know, I think the price we got for him back then was good, and the same for Mata. I mean, So I think the John Stones deal, it's tough, because I've had people telling me that it was the same with Fernando Torres. I mean, literally a couple of days between when Liverpool rejected our transfer offer, and then literally on deadline day he becomes a Chelsea player. So you never know. I think I agree with you. They put themselves into a corner now, and especially with the unrest with the fans, I think if Everton turn around and sell John Stones now, it's going to make even more Everton fans are going to get even more angry, and it makes them look like a selling club. So really, they back themselves into a corner. I mean, just on John Stones, I mean, what are your thoughts on a player handing in a transfer request? I know clubs are well in their right to do this. There's nothing wrong with it. Rejecting the transfer request. I mean, what are you? I don't know if you've got any information recently about how we've heard about the meetings between John Stones and Martinez and the board recently, but what are your thoughts on John Stones? I mean, he clearly has. Whether you think it's bad, like I've heard people say it's bad information from his agent or whatever, but he clearly wants to come to Chelsea. And, you know, what are your thoughts on how must he be feeling right now? You know, he clearly wants to progress his career. He played for his club respectfully on what was it, Wednesday against Barnsley. He didn't like say, I'm not playing now.
Yeah.
So I mean, he played for his club. You know, what are your thoughts on now them rejecting? How must John Stones as a player be feeling right now, considering he wants that transfer request done?
I think mentality and in football is huge. I think morale in football is huge. I think it's passed over far too much. It's why it's incredibly hard to break down a team that's on a winning run and incredibly easy to beat a team that's in really poor form. And I think that applies to the players individually as well. And it doesn't just upset the one player in John Stones. It upsets his centre-back partner, probably the goalkeeper, and to a lesser extent, the players further forward and alongside him. I think when people say that they're leaving players out because they don't think their mentality is right, I think that's completely justified. But I do think it will also have an effect on, say, John Stones, David De Gea, or Berahino. If they don't leave, all three of them don't leave, and they end up staying there, it's going to take them about a month to readjust back into things, to get over the fact that they haven't left to go to their club. And even then, it will still be in the back of their mind that, am I going to move in January? Am I going to move next summer? Do the club want me? Have this club ruined my chances of moving to where I want to go? And they all want to go there, let's be honest, because John Stones has handed in a transfer request. So regardless of whether or not it's information from his agent or whether or not it's him that's come up with it, he's made the decision. He wants to go. So he wants to be a Chelsea player, unless there's another club that we're not 100% sure of. Even though, did you see that Bill Kenwright statement where he said that there was another Premier League team? Well, I read that as there's another Premier League team and it was Chelsea, because the way that he worded it, he didn't include Chelsea in the phrase. So when he said another Premier League team, it could have been Chelsea.
That didn't make sense. Why
I wouldn't
didn't you
read
just
too
say
much
Chelsea?
into that. I don't think there's. I know a few papers have linked City and Manchester United more recently because City have signed Otamendi. I wouldn't read too much into that. It's Chelsea or nowhere for me, for John Stones. But I do think once he's handed in that transfer request, he's made a statement of intent to Everton and the board that he no longer wants to be at the club. And then that damages his reputation at the club. There will be boo boys inevitably at Everton if he stays there for their next game. That won't help him. And he'll always have it in the back of his mind. So I think that once a player hands in a transfer request and the bid's at 35 million or 38, depending on what you read, Everton should accept. They should back down and they should accept.
Yeah, I mean, because we've seen it several times with players. Eventually, they will leave. I mean, you know, I think with John Stones, if he ain't leaving this transfer window, he's eventually going to leave. I mean, Everton are just not in a position to keep a player like that because we've heard about the debt and we've heard about Everton as a club. I mean, I don't know if this is right. I heard this from someone, especially with their spending. Apparently, like Bristol City have spent more than them. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And it's just like, for a club like Everton, you know, they want to be, and they've got some decent players, but I just think, you know, it's as well with Ross Barkley, you think maybe not next summer, the summer after, you know, if he starts to grow even more as he seems to develop. He had a little bit, he didn't have that good of a season last year. But if he has another good season this year, you know, clubs are going to want to come in. That's just the cycle of football, you know. But I think people would absolutely destroy me on Twitter if I didn't ask you about Paul Pogba. It's all I get. Like, I get so many links to it. All I get asked is, are we signing Paul Pogba? My stance on it, until I see it from a reliable place that Chelsea are close to signing Paul Pogba, I can't believe it, in my opinion. I think, you know, on 100% Chelsea, you know, we have Tony on there who literally just says, why couldn't just go out and sign a player? But I'm sure, as you know, these deals are very difficult and there's a lot of factors that come into it. You know, price, does the club want to sell? Does the player actually want to come? You know, there's so many different things, and it's not just a case of slant. It's like we'd all like it to be like FIFA, where you put the money in, get the transfer request. If they reject the transfer request first, you put in some more money, and then you'll eventually get the player. Unfortunately, that's not the case, and of course, there are so many things. I mean, we got, well, it wasn't me, it was Eunice on 100% Chelsea got a link apparently to tell him that apparently Pogba and these demands that to me just sounded so ridiculous. They just didn't sound realistic about playing every game. And I sat there and I said, that doesn't sound like anything. I mean, maybe some managers would accept it, but Jose, and especially the way Chelsea are doing their business in recent seasons, it just doesn't make a lot of sense that it sort of reminds me of player power we used to have in the period when Mourinho left and before he came back, you know, where there was so much unrest at the club, you know, player power and all of that. I don't think Chelsea, the way they do business, would accept that. But from your point of view, and we've seen this with like Neymar and Manchester United, could there be a case, because I personally don't think it will happen this transfer window, because I don't think Chelsea should sell Oscar. Do you think that, has there been a good enough interest shown by Chelsea? And do you think Chelsea, maybe not, of course, this summer, but next summer, can go out and sign Paul Pogba?
I think we have to. You have to take out the media furore around it at the moment. And before that, everyone had it nailed on that he was going to Barcelona, and then they got the transfer ban. And they still sign players, but a player like Paul Pogba, 6 months out of the game, it's quite a big deal. Personally, I don't think that Chelsea will sign Pogba this window, but that's personal opinion. If they were to move on and sign him, I did hear at the Chelsea training ground that it would involve Oscar. And the reason it would involve Oscar is because he had a quiet period last season where he had an injury and he came back in and he wasn't really threatening and he was coming off the bench quite a lot, and it was Hazard and Willian that were really dictating the wings. And I just got a funny feeling now from what I've heard that if Chelsea do make a move to sign Paul Pogba, it will involve Oscar, and it will involve a considerable amount of money, probably somewhere in the region of about 45 million euros and Oscar. I don't think that's worth it, in my opinion. I think that Paul Pogba has tendency to be slightly like Mario Balotelli in his the way that he acts. I think he's slightly childish, and I think that could not balance well with Jose Mourinho, who's obviously a big voice, and some of the bigger guys in the training room. I mean, can you imagine Paul Pogba, who's a young French kid, coming in and giving it the arrogance, and John Terry standing for something like that? Terry and Cahill, they'd be all over him.
Well, as well, you got like Diego Costa in there. I know he doesn't speak English, but you know, you have Eden Hazard. You know, you have. Yeah, it just doesn't sound good. I don't want a player like Balotelli. Well, I like a Balotelli, you know, personality. It's just a question. And of course, he is like flavour of the month. You know what I mean? Like, you see all the vines of his goals. So there is clearly a tendency. You know, I could imagine something like that, but yeah, I can't see it happening personally. And I do agree that I think as well, Juventus are big admirers of Oscar. Yeah. But I think it doesn't make sense to sell Oscar, because I think this is the first season where he's not going to have like he wasn't involved in a Copa America, but in previous seasons, he's always been involved with Brazil. So this is his first season where he had a good rest. I actually think, although it was not the best performance, I actually think, I don't know if you agree with this, that Oscar had a decent first half against Swansea. I actually felt bad for him that he came off. I actually think in an underperforming team that day, I thought he was probably a bright spark. You know, he was trying to make things happen. And on his day, he is a brilliant footballer. I think he has faded. And we'll see this season if his fading is because of that tiredness from all the tournaments, or if it's just a case that that's what he does in seasons. We'll have to see. But I still believe that Oscar can come good. I think he can be a key player, and especially with Pedro, Oscar and Hazard, for me, could be an absolutely brilliant combination. The three behind the striker, for me, I think that could be brilliant. But let's move on now to a big discussion you made a video about on your channel. So subscribe to FootieWriter's channel. And it was a brilliant video. I think it was like a 21-minute video. So I encourage anyone who's interested in this topic to go and watch it. And it's ITKs, in the nose. Of course, we hear a lot of rubbish on social media. I remember, I think it was last season because I was so excited for Costa to come to Chelsea. And I remember this was when I was kind of less intelligent about what transfer news was reliable or not. But as you become more trustworthy and kind of more smart about what sites to listen to and where the news does come from, you just got to be smart of what comes off and what doesn't. So, you know, what are your opinions on ITKs, you know, and the whole kind of problem with them? Because it does, I mean, you know, as you said in your video that you made about it, probably being in the know is a good thing, but, you know, it comes with a bad kind of rep now, because people just see it as you're lying. Do you know what I mean? Unless you have like one of the sources from like Sky or, you know, BBC, you know. So what are your opinion on the whole ITK kind of problem, if you put it that way?
I think it's a disease, for want of a better word. I think that people have got in on it to gain a Twitter following so that they can promote ads and make money. I think that a lot of people follow some of the main guys because they almost see it as a joke and they want to laugh at them, but all they're doing is feeding an ego and giving them false belief, which is why they continue to do it, and it will never go away. Unfortunately, people are getting more wise to it. I just wanted to clear one point up that I didn't clear up in that video. Some of the abuse that these guys get is ridiculous. It's racist, it's homophobic, it's disgusting. It makes me feel sick. I don't think that people should take it that seriously against these guys. If they want to do it, fair enough. If you want to block them, do it. Don't turn around to them and say, you know, whatever, any word under the sun, I'll keep it clean. Because that's just not productive in any sense of the word. But they are causing a problem for people like me. I get called ITK every day, and as you said, ITK is a phrase that is derisory in the industry. If somebody calls you an ITK, as you said, it should be a good thing because you know somebody or you know a group of people who have contacts. I know several agents, I know journalists. I get that through socializing with them, and as I said in the video, having a face and getting out to games and meeting people, and you get to know people. Agents will tell you their stories because they want to build up media on it, but they also want to build up some false media. So you get bad agents who want to build like Sergio Ramos to Manchester United to run up his contract. You do tend to get some reliable people, you get some not so reliable people. Also, with a lot of things, deals go wrong. We were just saying that deals are so complicated. I've seen a professional Premier League contract, a blank one, which had every single bit of detail. It's media rights, it's image rights, which is almost the same thing. It's performance fees, it's appearance fees. It's you know, if you get to the 4th round in the League Cup, you get X. There's so much detail that goes into any contract, and one slip up on any of those negotiations can cause a deal to fall flat on its face. There are respected, and by respected I mean within the journalist field, the guys that get information right more often than not, and people still ban them in with ITKs, which is completely unfair. It's like if you're working in an industry and you're getting on with your job, just somebody coming to you and saying, oh, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know, blah, blah, blah. And a professional journalist who gets information will never, ever get it right 100% of the time. They probably won't get it right 90% of the time. But the information that they're given at that time, unless, and this is where it comes a bit of a problem, because some people do make stories up to sell newspapers. And that's where it kind of turns into a, where's the line between an ITK and somebody that actually has information? The reality is that these paper journalists are given these stories by agents. So they are getting them from what is supposedly a credible source, but then they over exaggerate and they carry on with like the Neymar story, which should have been dead in the water after his agent came out and said that he didn't want to leave, and Neymar hadn't come out and said anything. And yet a story appeared in the paper the exact day after, 240 million. I won't quote the paper, you probably saw it. It's just a problem that they need to know when to stop. And I think that some of the journalists are giving the industry a bad name because they're sort of going to the level of ITKs. And one thing that ITKs always do is they promote the ones that they get right, which is fair enough. And I'll give you the reason that that's fair enough in the industry, because everyone, all of the bigger guys do it because they get so much abuse thrown at them all the time that when something comes up, it's like, look, I got it right. And what it ends up usually happening is more abuse is thrown at them, which once again, I don't think is fair. You can, I mean, as I said in the video, a face is one of the main things. If you've got an agent account hiding behind one of those black figures that they put out, or another account that's got no face on it, then the likelihood is they don't have information. And that's just a fact. And another thing is a press pass, because a press pass gets you places, it gets you known. You have to go through quite a strenuous process to get a press pass. It's basically an acceptance into a industry that's been going on for ages, but it's quite hard to get into. I mean, I needed several pieces on high profile sites. I needed a diploma, etc., etc. If they're not at the games, if they're not talking to the right people, then they won't have information. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, that's really fast. I'm getting some. Wait a minute, am I getting some? I can hear myself back. Is that on your side?
I've got you.
Okay, cool. No, I was just going to say that's really fascinating especially about the Premier League contract. I mean, I know we hear rumors all the time about stuff. I mean, I got some news about John Stones the other day, and it was from a person that I messaged on Twitter. He seemed like he had some credible information. I put it out there and I said, listen, if I get this news wrong, you can criticize me. I have no problem. I'm not going to take the tweet down. I will take responsibility. And the news I was given from, in my opinion, a credible source, that Everton were not selling until they wanted a player in return, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And Chelsea were willing to pay 34 million plus Victor Moses to sign John Stones.
Yeah,
that to me sounded kind of credible, because it makes sense, because you heard the rumours about a negotiation between West Ham and Chelsea for Victor Moses. Victor Moses doesn't look like he's going to be involved in the squad, but I put it up there. I kind of felt bad for putting it up there, because I know we were having this discussion and about the ITK thing, and I really didn't want to be labelled as one. And if I was, I really am not in the know. All I will do on my Twitter is I will do what most other YouTube accounts or football accounts. I will relay information that I see from the Independent, Telegraph, Sky. I relay that. That's all I do, really. And because that's the way it is. But I've said to those people that said to me, "Oh, you're in the know." I'm like, listen, if this, and it could be very likely that this piece of information is wrong, then I take full responsibility for it. I'm not gonna say, "Oh, I did." You know what I mean? I'll take it down and then slightly say, "Well, I never really," the stuff that, as you
don't address it.
Yeah. It's just I'll take full responsibility for it. But yeah, really fascinating. We'll wrap it up in it, because I know you're busy. You're a busy guy, and so I'll wrap it up. So I mean, yeah, it is really fascinating, especially with ITKs, as you said, with the way Twitter's going. It's just going to get worse and worse. And the obvious ITK accounts are now merging with other accounts I've seen. So you'll have people who are who usually just look like they're fan accounts, but then they stop tweeting information. Yeah, I mean, it could be a fascinating day on, as you said, about the John Stones deal. I'd really love to see it go through, because I think it'd be a brilliant sign for Chelsea, not just for for the future, and really learning under John Terry. And I think it'd be a brilliant signing. I could see him and Kurt Zouma being the defensive partnership. But yeah, just wrap it up. What are your predictions for the last, also predictions on Chelsea for the season, predictions on the last few days of the transfer window? You can talk other stuff other than Chelsea, but and yeah, also just promote your YouTube channel and Twitter and stuff like that before we end it.
Okay, cool. I think I'm going to stick by it. I think Chelsea will win the league, and obviously a lot of people will say that's biased, but it's personal opinion. Said that they win the league last season. I didn't say that they win the league the season before. Still think we will this season, only because the other teams have brought a lot of players and they're going to need time to gel inevitably, even though a player like Raheem Sterling has gone in at 100 miles an hour. So I do think that Chelsea will win the league. I also think that Chelsea will sign John Stones, although that's not confirmed. I don't think we'll sign Paul Pogba, although once again, it could come from left field. A bid could come in. Obviously, Chelsea are interested in Paul Pogba. Let's get that down first, because everyone is, almost everyone is anyway. And then I think you'll see Arsenal and Manchester United do some business in the last few days. I think you'll see Norwich do quite a bit of business, even though that's a neither here nor there. But
sorry, just to interrupt. What do you think about Arsenal? Because I mean, that's something I know. You had the Karim Benzema thing; they were linked all summer, and then Benzema himself. You're talking about before about like people, even when the agent comes out, when Karim Benzema himself comes out on Twitter and says Real Madrid, and they're still being linked to. But what do you think about? Sorry to interrupt. Just about Arsenal in truth, like because they usually are very active on the last day. Have you been? Do you think they will make any deals? Because they clearly need a striker, you know, and that's usually what they need, you know. But they do need other positions, and you know, Wenger's very well known for these last minute deals. Do you think they will be involved in the last day of the transfer window?
Yeah, I think it's strange. I think for a company that bases itself so much on finances and a fans so much on finances, I think it's strange that they make these last minute deals on players. Now, one thing I did hear was that if they were interested in Benzema, which it looks like they probably were, Wenger would have put all of his eggs in that basket and he would have gone, Benzema, I want Benzema. So when Benzema comes out and says no, there's very little of a plan B. And it's why you get all of the same people linked again, like your Cavani's and Higuain's and Ibrahimovic's to a certain extent, because it's the same people that the media then go back to, because it's the level of number nines that are in the game at the moment. It isn't very high. I mean, there's only a few world class, and past that, there's not too much. So that's why you get Benzema, because he's the biggest name that they could potentially reach. And then you get other names down the line. And I think that Arsenal will do business, and I think there'll be somebody surprising, and I think it will be extremely interesting. But I think that they need to more than anything else. As I said yesterday on a Labrooks podcast, they need a special signing to make it known that they're there to the top four, to make a statement of intent, to get the fans excited, to get people like Arsenal Fan TV really happy about, you know, the people there, and it goes around the ground as well. When a new signing's made, it's energy into the crowd, and it really helps. So I think that they really do need to pull something out, and I think that they probably will as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the signing, I think when Diego Costa came, I know Pedro excited a load of people, and being at the game on Sunday at West Brom, seeing him play was just incredible in the way he played. But I think Costa was especially the one for me that really rejuvenated all of us. I think, you know, having that striker problem for many years, you know, even when Drogba, because he was kind of wasn't at his peak, he was starting to go down. You see everything with Torres. I think that really, and you see the way he performed on the pitch. I mean, you know, he really became a fan's favourite. So yeah, we'll wrap it up now. Thank you so much, mate, for coming on. Really interesting insight into the transfers, and I encourage everyone watching, go and follow him on Twitter at FootieWriter. Also check out his YouTube channel, which is the same, FootieWriter. I think, yeah. Is it the same? You know, really good source for reliable information, as you've probably heard tonight. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on, mate. So yeah, just to end it, of course, we've got the game tomorrow against Crystal Palace. What are your thoughts quickly on the game, and give me like a score prediction?
I'm going to go 2-0 and Pedro and Costa. Let's be a bit more specific.
Yeah, I went with the same 2-0, and yeah, I'd love to see that, Pedro and Diego getting on the score sheet. So thank you, mate, and thank you so much, guys, for watching. You can follow me on Twitter at @SonChelsea. Of course, there'll be more content coming up on this channel. I'll be doing the Crystal Palace review. That'll probably be up an hour after the game tomorrow. So thank you guys for watching, and yep, I'll see you again.